This is Glow in the Dark Radio. The science fiction podcast, with original independent science fiction, written and performed by Mike Luoma, with music by Kevin MacLeod. The Vatican Assassin trilogy and The Adventures of Alibi Jones by Mike Luoma are available in ebook, trade paperback, and audiobook wherever you find your books online. Get links and details at glowinthedarkradio.com. This is the science fiction podcast, Glow in the Dark Radio. I'm your host, your writer and reader, Mike Luoma. And we have part 3 of 3 of the short story, Alibi Jones' Christmas Present, coming up on this episode. Alibi Jones messed around with Krish's newly found Devrizium technology and found himself sent back through time to visit his father, BC, as a young man, and as a new Vatican assassin on assignment in Argentina. They've managed to get along so far, though BC has no real idea who Alibi Jones is. He just knows he's somehow related to him. They've just knocked out a threat named Stefan, who Alibi thinks is a young finder. He's not entirely sure, but thinks so. Now they need to get rid of him. And BC needs to complete his mission for the Vatican. And of course, Alibi Jones needs to get back to his own time, back to his Christmas present. So we'll find out if they have any luck with any of this in part 3 of 3 of Alibi Jones' Christmas Present, coming up on Glow in the Dark Radio. In just a couple episodes, we're going to be coming up on the 20th anniversary of this podcast, which began back in September of 2006. Now, I'm not sure if I'm doing anything for this anniversary yet. If you have any requests or any ideas, you let me know. I do want to thank patrons, though, because I wouldn't have made it this far without your help. So, thank you. I'd love for you to become a patron if you're not one. You can do that at patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio. Head there and find out about becoming a patron. You can be a member for $2, $5, or $10 a month, and it's all taken care of by the folks there at Patreon. You help support the podcast. It's crowdfunded. I don't run advertising. I do run promos for a couple other podcasts that I've been supporting for almost 20 years, it feels like. But yeah, otherwise, I don't run ads, and I try to keep it as clutter-free as possible with just an intro and an outro and a chapter a week. And once again, thank you. If you're a patron, you know who you are. And if you could, think about becoming one at patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio. We'll get into part 3 of 3 of Alibi Jones' Christmas Present next on Glow in the Dark Radio.
Wake up, go to work. Work. Come home. Eat dinner. Rot your brain out. Go to bed. Lather. Rinse. Repeat. Are you tired of an old humdrum life? Tired of things that just weigh you down and depress you? Wouldn't you rather just focus on things that are awesome? Tune into Nutty Bites. Find out what's awesome. Nutty Bites. nimlas.org/blog.
Now here's part 3 of 3 of Alibi Jones' Christmas Present on Glow in the Dark Radio. Between them, BC and Alibi maneuvered Stefan downstairs and out the front door of the rectory. As they half-dragged, half-carried Stefan down the front steps toward the busy street, Alibi noticed the heavy security presence. Armed security guards stood on either side of the main rectory door. 2 more were nearby, at the foot of the front steps. "Too much nog," BC joked in Spanish with one of the guards on the sidewalk. BC flagged down an autocab capsule, a small self-driving flying taxi. BC and Alibi placed the unconscious Stefan Finder in the passenger capsule. BC punched in an address, then lifted Stefan's arm and waved it at the credit sensor. "You have the credit?" BC asked in Spanish. The sensor flashed green. "Good. Get our friend home safe to Buenos Aires. Thanks." BC and Alibi watched the cab fly away. "Father Campion!" BC and Alibi's heads turned as someone called to BC. "It's Bishop Soul," BC said to Alibi in a whisper. "Keep quiet." The bishop walked over to BC and Alibi. He looked puzzled. "I've been looking for you," he said to BC. "And who's this?" "This is Father Alexander, visiting from the Vatican," BC responded, BSing on his feet. "He brought me some things I need, and my private communiques." The 2 men spoke in Spanish. Alibi had no idea what they were saying. The bishop turned to Alibi. "Hello, Father," the bishop said. "I'm Bishop Soul." Alibi looked a little panicked. "I'm sorry, Bishop Soul. He doesn't speak Spanish," BC explained to the bishop. BC switched to English. "Father Alexander, this is Bishop Soul." "Honored to meet you, sir," Alibi said. The bishop looked Alibi over, assessing him. Alibi bowed a little to the bishop, but the bishop had already turned back to BC, apparently forgetting about Father Alexander, as he would any errand boy. "Funny," the bishop said, still in Spanish. "I'd heard your guest was a less savory sort." He changed the subject. "Just came from the sacristy," the bishop said to BC. "Could use some more hands getting the cathedral in order for our Mass and our honored guests this evening. Can you and the father here, if he's staying, head over and help?" "Certainly, Father Rick," BC responded. "I was actually just about to show the father the cathedral." "Very good. Carry on, then," the bishop said. He turned and headed up the rectory steps. "What did he say? Was that okay?" Alibi asked. "I couldn't tell. I don't know any Spanish." "It was fine," BC said. "Fine." BC turned and gestured for Alibi to follow him. "Let's get over to the church," BC said, "so you can show me that box." "It should be right here," Alibi said. "I left it right here." BC and Alibi stood on opposite sides of the open door of a confessional booth. Inside was only an empty bench, where both had expected to see an alien box. It had taken them a while to work their way to the back of the church, having been pressed into a cleaning detail by the Reverend Gonzalez upon entering the church. BC introduced Alibi to her as his cousin, another priest, visiting as a messenger from the Vatican, who didn't know Spanish. And actually working alongside him, doing meaningless labor, he'd been warming up to the kid. But now, he was pissed. "To think, I almost started to believe you," BC said, angry. Alibi looked over at BC, suddenly a bit scared of him. BC continued. "After Stefan or Finder called you my little brother, he saw a resemblance. Got me wondering who you were. But now, gee." "Wait a sec," Alibi said. He leaned into the booth. There was a glimmer of something in the air. He reached out to touch it, and the glimmer surrounded his hand. The alien box reappeared. 1 second it wasn't there, the next it was. What?" BC stopped making sense as he leaned into the confessional and stared at the box. "There it is," Alibi said. BC reached out. "Don't touch it," Alibi almost screamed, but too late. BC touched the box. Nothing happened. BC and Alibi looked at each other, as BC continued touching the alien box. "Why?" BC asked. Both BC and Alibi were confused. Alibi had expected BC and the box to zap out of there. Nothing happened. Even the glimmer was gone. "You two!" a woman's voice called out in Spanish. "What are you doing?" Alibi and BC turned and looked back out of the confessional into the church as whomever called them approached. Reverend Gonzalez emerged from the shadows. Alibi, not understanding her Spanish, thought she was angry at them, but didn't know why. BC knew her anger wasn't for him and Alibi. "Don't bother! Skip those," she said, almost too loud. "I don't think that rich fuck is going to use our confessionals while she's down here, do you?" "Probably not, Reverend Gonzalez," BC agreed. He smiled and tried to think himself in Gonzalez's way, so that she couldn't see the bizarre box in the confessional behind him. "But now, Reverend Gonzalez, is that any way to talk about this diocese's biggest financial supporter? I'm told that rich fuck gives generously to the church." Alibi took his cues from BC. BC seemed relaxed, so Alibi relaxed. A little. He still tried to stand between the woman priest and the box behind him, blocking her vision. He couldn't understand a word the two others were saying. Alibi leaned into BC a little too much, almost losing balance. Gonzalez noticed the strange behavior and peered past the men into the confessional. Her eyebrows raised on her forehead, but she didn't say a word. She shook her head. "Simone Pose cannot buy God's grace," Gonzalez said. "She cannot buy her way out of hypocrisy." Alibi wanted to look behind him. Had she seen the box? What was she doing? What was she saying? Gonzalez leaned in to whisper at BC. "He doesn't speak Spanish, does he, BC?" "Nope," BC said. "Good," she said. "I don't need him reporting me." Gong! One of the church's bells rang out. "Shit," Gonzalez swore. "You need to go robe up, BC," she said, suddenly all business. "Already?" BC asked. He frowned. She pressed on, turning to Alibi. "We have to be in our places early," she said. "But this clown isn't on the seating plan." Alibi didn't know what she was saying, but could tell it wasn't good by her tone of voice. "Maybe he should hide in the confessional," she said. BC felt that finally gave him his opportunity to look, so he turned his head. The box was gone. Alibi looked to BC for his reaction, and grew alarmed to see BC looked alarmed. Gonzalez started to laugh. She'd made a joke. "I'm kidding," she said. "Pose's security goons would lose their shit." Alibi was still mightily confused, but he relaxed as BC smiled again. Then Alibi glanced back for the box, too, and was glad to see it had vanished. "As it is, they won't let us leave the church now anyway," she said. "Besides, where would we go? She's taken over the rectory. Pig." BC smiled at Gonzalez. "Trying to get it all out of your system now?" he asked. "Yup," she said. "Have to before Mass. Besides, I know how you talk off-duty, BC, and he can't understand me." She smirked, and then she playfully elbowed BC. "Go get robed up," she said. "Then get set to hurry up and wait for the great Simone Pose." BC smirked. He had other plans for the great Simone Pose. He fingered his new bracelet. Alibi frowned, tired of being confused. He didn't know why his implanted translator wasn't working, but it was a problem. And now the woman was talking to him. Or rather, looking at him, pointing at something else, and talking to BC. "But first, BC," she said, "tell your cousin to stand over there and..." Alibi Jones stood next to a holy water font at the back of the church. He'd watched every person who entered the cathedral dip their fingers in the holy water in the basin on the top of the little stout pedestal, about waist high, and then bless themselves. His job had been to watch for spillage and wipe it away with a towel Gonzalez gave him. The cathedral was packed for the Christmas Eve service. The Mass seemed to be a big deal, but Alibi wasn't sure if that was because of the holiday or because some rich woman was visiting. The place seemed to be her hometown. At any rate, it brought out a crowd. That meant a lot of fingers, lots of blessings, and yet a surprisingly minor amount of spillage. A font attendant? Alibi mumbled to himself. Is that even a thing? He looked at the slightly moistened towel in his hand. Guess it is tonight. He'd thought about draping the small towel over one of the branches of the sparsely decorated 6-foot-tall Christmas tree that stood next to him, and the font, to dry it. But the towel was wet with holy water. Alibi realized even BC might frown on him treating holy things like dirty laundry. Besides, he didn't want to attract any undue attention to himself. Or to the tree, for that matter. He'd moved the Devrizium box from out of the closet with the chair in it that BC called a confessional to sit under the tree next to him, where he could keep an eye on it. Well, theoretically keep an eye on it. Hard to keep an eye on something that kept cloaking itself invisible. Oh, strangely, the box would let him see it, but it then turned invisible again, especially when others approached, as if it understood when it needed to hide. It seemed to act the way Alibi wanted it to. It had brought him back here to BC when he'd merely thought about BC in the first place. Alibi wondered, and worried, just how intricately the box was now tied into his brain. You know, Box, if you're that much in my head, you could at least translate these people for me. In the distance, up on the altar, the bishop continued proclaiming the Mass in Spanish. Alibi still couldn't understand a word he said. Alibi sighed and looked around the crowded church. It did have a certain warmth and charm. Maybe his aunt was right. Maybe they could use a little Christmas at the Hornet's Nest. He surveyed the tree next to him again, looking it up and down. Maybe I could take this tree back with me, huh? Hope I can just think my way back when I can finally focus and concentrate on it. There had been people nearby ever since Gonzalez surprised him in BC with the box. Moving the box to keep it with him had proved challenging enough. Making it visible long enough to use it, if it worked, was going to be a whole different story. If it worked, no problem. But if it didn't, Alibi would be stuck there trying to explain himself and the box, and probably trying not to get killed by BC for blowing his mission too. A flash on the edge of his sight caught Alibi's attention. What's that sparkle next to the tree? Oh, those aren't Christmas lights. A low buzzing sound rose up in the air next to Alibi. BC's collar itched. He couldn't do anything about it. That was the problem at being up in the front row. Couldn't move. His eyes glanced from side to side. His mark was behind him. He would soon shake her hand, and she'd be dead. And now, my brothers and sisters in Christ, the bishop said. BC kept his hands and wrists hidden by his priestly robes, and clicked the Killbot bracelet from Stefan into place on his right wrist. Let us offer one another. BC slid the bracelet down his wrist, onto his hand, until the nubs rested in his palm, and squeezed as instructed, releasing the Killbots. Then he let the bracelet drop. The sign of peace. BC turned, along with the entire front row of priests in the pews. A wealthy and extravagantly attired woman glared up at him. Simone Pose. BC extended his hand. Peace be with you. Busy shaking her hand, BC didn't notice the odd glow at the back of the church. Alibi watched, amazed, as the entire crowd in front of him, the whole church full of people, erupted into a frenzy of handshaking. Even more amazing, it seemed to distract them from the Devrizium box, which had reappeared and now glowed beneath the tree. They didn't even seem to have noticed the armored Devrizium in glowing silver and bright blue, who'd appeared just behind him. Alibi recognized the alien. There were only a handful of them, after all, or there had been. They should all be gone. This was Holone, master of the Devrizium's time scanners. The alien shouted at Alibi in a filtered metallic chorus of a voice.
You!
Keep it down, Alibi said, staying calm.
I have surrounded myself, and you, Alibi Jones, and the thought box, in a stasis field,
Holone said.
We are shielded from the people around us.
Around them, Alibi saw the stasis field begin to do its work. The people seemed almost frozen, now shaking each other's hands in extreme slow motion. Time was passing much more quickly inside of the field relative to the outside world. Holone held up an arm and scanned Alibi. Alibi glared at the alien, assessing the situation, feeling newly strong and defiant, reawakened from the Christmas spell he'd been falling under by the presence of an old foe. Time to fight.
The council had you,
Holone said.
but by my instruments, you are at least a year older than when I left you.
I'm a later addition, Alibi Jones, he said, from after the Time War. That you lost.
But
The alien seemed confused.
how are you here now? This cannot be.
You know, I didn't mean to be here now, Alibi said. All I did was think about my father at Christmas time, and it brought me here. Alibi pointed at the box.
It should not work for you like that.
Holone said.
Yet I trace the ripples, the disturbances here.
Does you no good to kill me, you know, Alibi said. It's too late. In my timeline, you already lost. I wonder if I can bargain with him. Unfortunately, in their armor, they are hard to read. Alibi got honest with the Devrizium. Think I saw you implode, Alibi said. Don't trust the blue and purple guy either. He's not...
Quiet!
Holone shouted.
If the time stream itself did not protect you, I will kill you now.
Okay, fine, Alibi said, trying to calm the alien down. Since you can't kill me, can you help me get back to my time? All this disturbing rippling can't be good.
If you were removed, you and your damages would be forgotten,
Holone said.
The ripples quieted.
Alibi waited as the Devrizium considered. Light glinted off his silver space-time armor, and the seams glowed bright blue. Think he's considering? Hard to tell. The Devrizium suddenly stretched out its arms, pointing one at Alibi, one at the box. Alibi felt warmer and felt a tingling of energy, like mild static electricity, ripple across his skin. A painless bluish lightning surrounded him and seemed to fly off the box and Holone as well, connecting the three of them.
Bah!
Holone said.
If you won the Time War, my reality already unravels. And yet, you remaining outside of your time speeds that chaos. So I must bring you back to your original time to slow my own destruction.
With Holone evidently about to send them back to the future, Alibi entertained an entirely different thought.
Must try to slow the coming apart,
Holone said. As Holone shouted, Alibi grabbed for the Christmas tree next to him. Alibi, the tree, Halone and the Thought Box traveled ahead through time in a gray-gold haze. Alibi perceived the haze taking shape and form as it became Krish's lab. As he'd left it, sparkling glimmers filled the air as he reappeared next to Krish. "Doing?" Krish finished asking him. "Watch out, Krish!" Alibi shouted. "Where did that come from?" Krish asked, startled by the sudden appearance of Halone.
"Ah! Aha!"
Halone said. The Devrizium's head swiveled around, taking in their new surroundings.
"I can feel it! The timeline no longer protects you, Alibi Jones!"
Alibi noticed the alien was growing a weapon up and out of its arm, fashioning some sort of techno-organic blaster. Alibi then noticed something else. Halone was beginning to fade. Krish smirked. He saw it too. "Maybe the timeline no longer has to," Krish said.
"What?"
Halone said. The Devrizium looked at its arm.
"No!"
"Yes!" Krish declared. "Oh no!" Alibi said. "The box too!" The box wasn't just fading. It had begun oozing an oily gray and black ooze, as if melting. It started making an odd warbling, singing sound. Halone's cry drew their attention. Until it faded out as he did. As Alibi and Krish turned back to the box, it bubbled into a fading cloud of inky black smoke. Then it imploded with a pop. "No!" Alibi said. "What was that?" Anita's sudden presence and question shocked both Alibi and Krish back into themselves. Neither saw her walk into the lab. "That was the Devrizium tech I had hoped to have Alibi look at," Krish said, quick on his feet. "Unfortunately, as you just saw, it became unstable." "Well, that is too bad," she said. "And Alibi, that won't do at all." Alibi was confused until he realized he was still holding the Christmas tree from the church in his left hand. Well, what was left of it after traveling through time, it had gone from a full young tree about 6 feet tall to old, withered, and now only about 2 feet tall, missing most of its branches. One lone ornament still somehow clung to one branch, apparently out of sheer stubbornness. Anita shook her head and looking at Alibi's tree. Krish smiled at Anita, but gave Alibi a side-eye glance. Alibi knew Krish had already figured him out, but Krish was not telling Anita he'd found Alibi in his lab when he shouldn't have been in there. "What?" Alibi said, playing innocent with his aunt. "That tree, Alibi," she said. "Looks like Charlie Brown's. Classic children's cartoon character. Oh, look it up, Allie. You can watch it on your way to Depot." "Okay," he said. "Where did you find that thing?" she asked rhetorically. She then turned and strolled out. "Get going, Alibi!" she called back over her shoulder. Alibi looked relieved. Then Anita popped her head back inside the lab door, startling both Alibi and Krish. "And hurry back," she said. "Just got word that strange man Finder is on his way here to see you. For some reason," she said. "Gotcha," Alibi said. "Will do." Anita finally left them alone. Krish gave Alibi a long, disappointed look. "Okay, stop," Alibi said, finally. I know, I'm sorry, Krish." "Well," Krish said, as if finding a bright spot, "you did bring back a tree. I'll give you that." The two laughed. Then Alibi frowned. "I am sorry, Krish," he said. "Sorry to sneak around behind your back. Thank you for not telling my aunt what I did." Krish smiled as he reassured Alibi. "You are welcome, Alibi," Krish said. "Consider it a gift. My Christmas present to you, eh?" Alibi thought of his father. Funny. What came back to him was a simple smile BC gave him when they were talking, cleaning the church, just a couple of hours ago. Just a couple and 30 years ago. Quite a gift, Krish. Greater than you can know. Alibi smiled back at Krish. Speaking of Christmas, I better get going to Depot so I can get back and deal with the next thing, Alibi said. He darkened a little as he thought of Stefan. So, what do you suppose Finder wants this time? The end. For now. That was part 3 of 3 of Alibi Jones' Christmas Present, part of the Adventures of Alibi Jones' Chronological Omnibus on Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. God bless us, everyone! I don't know, little Christmas carol sneaking in there, a little Scrooge, as Tiny Tim said. Alibi Jones' Christmas Present draws to its close, with BC back to killing for the Pope, and Alibi Jones back in time for the holidays. And up next, we're going to be doing Alibi Jones and the Starseeds of Earth, as the Chronological Omnibus continues on Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. That is the last Alibi Jones novel at this time. The next one is still in my head, and many notebooks and files, and it's there. It's just, it needs to be kind of written, and I hate to be like George R.R. Martin, and I wouldn't compare myself to him because I don't make any kind of money like that. Never had anything adapted for TV, nothing, no. But, I don't mean to be like him and not get the book out, but it's still just sort of cooking. Gestating? So I'm hoping as I revisit Starseeds, as we start doing Starseeds on the podcast, I'm hopeful the next one is going to sort of start to flow, We'll see. And we will get into the Starseeds of Earth coming up on our next episode of Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. And that is all for this week. I'm your host, your writer and reader, Mike Luoma. Thank you again for listening to Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. This podcast presentation is copyright 2026 by Michael F. Luoma and is protected under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License, CC by NCND 4.0. Music by Kevin MacLeod. You can find his work at Incompetech.com. Mike's books are available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook, wherever you find books online. Get links and more details at glowinthedarkradio.com and mikeluoma.com. This has been a presentation of Glow in the Dark Radio.